Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Two Point Capital Management, an investment firm working with clients to create custom portfolios of stocks and bonds. Two Point is dedicated to helping people manage financial risk in good times and bad. More at twopointcapital.com.
From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Our connection this hour was made in 1985 when a student named Kevin Surace graduated from RIT and promptly began a career that would put him in the center of the tech world. Surace has almost too many accolades to list. Inc. Magazine Entrepreneur of the Year, featured on CNBC, CNN, Time Magazine. He's often described as one of the innovators who paved the way for Siri. He's often called the father of the digital assistant. And now, decades after graduating from RIT, he's back in Rochester and still working tirelessly in tech. He has 94 patents at my last count and was working on a 95th in the artificial intelligence space. Legitimately, Kevin is a titan in AI in the tech world. But this will probably be a different kind of conversation for Kevin. I've watched him in dozens of interviews, mainly on tech podcasts, where he is kind of a deity. And here on Connections, listeners probably know that I've become a bit of a skeptic of AI, and so maybe Kevin can offer a kind of intervention for me. Or maybe I will convince Kevin and his colleagues to just stop. Probably not. No, that's not going to happen. So how are we going to live with AI in the future? A big question that Kevin Surace is asked all the time is, what's it going to do to the workforce? What is it going to do to my job or my kids' jobs? He and I were talking about that before the program began. We're going to talk about work productivity, what might change, and a lot more with Kevin Surace, who is a Silicon Valley pioneer. It's nice to have you in the studio. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So you really are the father of the digital assistant. How did you do that?
AI assistant and voice AI all came out of a project in a public company called General Magic that spun out of Apple Computer, actually. Came out of Apple in the early 90s. And one of the things we developed were the first AI assistants. And you could talk to her. Her name was Mary. And you had a virtually full conversation
Mary,
with
not
her.
Siri.
Mary, not
Okay.
Siri. Siri didn't happen yet. Siri was two generations later, but a complete copy of what we built. So what we built ended up having 11 or 12 U.S. patents or so. And it was called Portico. And My Talk and Magic Talk, and GM had it for the GM OnStar Virtual Advisor. And so we hosted all of those. We built an operations center. There was no cloud at the time. You had to build your own. And she was amazing, actually. I mean, by the way, she would answer your phone, and if she knew who you were, she'd say, "Oh, Evan, I recognize you. Would you like to book a time on Kevin's calendar?" I still can't do that today.
And this was 1990...
1998.
1998.
Mm-hmm. 1998.
Okay, so pretty sophisticated.
Oh, yes.
So why aren't you known as the father of Siri? Did they steal it from you? Are you like the Winklevosses with Mark Zuckerberg?
Well, it's complicated. In Silicon Valley, you publish these patents, right? And then lots of startups read the patents and go, we should do that. And actually, the people at Siri and the people before Siri tell me in some other companies, a lot of those people came out of Netscape and a couple of other companies that knew me. Like, I know these people, right? And they did exactly what you do in Silicon Valley. Copy, and copy is the best form of flattery, right? And they copy what you did. You list it all. You teach them how to do it in the patents, and they do it. And so you go, well, why didn't the startup get sued or something? Well, there's a story behind that. So Nathan Myhrvold used to be the CTO of Microsoft, and he was a friend. And Nathan bought all of the voice AI patents, the voice user interface patents that we did at General Magic. He bought them, and he sat on them at a company called Intellectual Ventures. And so he didn't go after those startups. They have no money. He waited until Apple bought one of the startups. Then he knocks on the door and says, excuse me, by my addition, you owe me $187 million today and probably a few billion over the coming years, right? So that's how that works, and it always works that way. And so this is standard fare.
Kevin Surace, my guest, and he has been so graceful. And I just want to say what a good and graceful guest Kevin is. Coming back from a long paternity leave, we had Kevin booked for today, but turns out we had also booked the Rochester superintendent, which listeners might have heard that we mentioned he was going to be on the program today. The Rochester superintendent, the new superintendent, Dr. Eric J. Rosser, will be on the program likely next week now. He's had to move that conversation. And now Kevin is back here. By the way, thank you for being so flexible.
Oh, my pleasure.
I know you're very busy. So.
Happy to be on.
And when you had Mary in the late 1990s and you see where this is going, I mean, I don't know if you remember exactly what you're thinking in the late 90s, but you certainly had a better idea for where technology could take us. We were not the lay people are not very sophisticated about where we think it's going. We have a lot of sci-fi movies, but in the late 1990s, how much was AI Did you think it was going to dominate our future? Did you think it was going to be a race to the top with it? I mean, how did you view AI?
Well, there's a lot of ways to answer that. First of all, on the Mary product or Portico, the first time we demoed that on stage, people nearly fell out of their seat because I was talking to Mary and she was talking back to me, and I could interrupt her. I literally could interrupt her and say, "No, read me my email right now." "Okay, Kevin, no problem." And she'd do that, and you'd go, "What is this?" Right? Now, it turns out the number of things she could understand was in the thousands, right? The number of things she could say was in the thousands or millions, but it wasn't trillions like an LLM today. But we imagined that there would be a day that the features we're seeing today would occur. But a lot of things had to happen for that to happen, right? And the biggest was that compute horsepower had to double every year and a half or so, which it has since then. You needed immense amount of compute horsepower to do the kinds of computations that we're doing today and have her respond quickly. We could have had her respond in 30 minutes and have a lot of the understanding we have today. But to respond in a second or two, that's tricky. So I'll tell you, our vision was to have something like we have today. And when people first saw GPT 3.5, I think it was 2.5, 3 years ago, right? And they were blown away. In the AI world, we weren't as blown away because we had been working with earlier models of transformers since 2017. But a lot of these things we would talk to in Python, not in English. And finally, everyone could talk in English, and it changed the game. Like 6 billion people I can speak to a computer finally, right? Well, I've been speaking to computers since the 90s, right? So we've watched the technology move forward. It's the most exciting time, I think, to be alive, but it's the most exciting time in tech we have ever had. It's our Apollo program.
I can certainly understand that. And so the one thing that stands out most to me, perhaps most often when I read about what is happening now, not what's happening in the 90s, the difference that I'm hearing is this. In the 90s, you had Mary, and people were blown away when they saw what Mary could do. But you could explain whatever Mary was doing. You could kind of black box it and figure it out. I'm sure you saw the story as everyone was talking about Grok and Grok's anti-Semitic explosion this summer. And Grok is for listeners who don't know Grok, Grok has become this popular piece of technology that people often consult as a kind of adjudicator of fact. I mean, even on social media, people say, "Hey, Grok, is it true that this bill will do what Republicans or Democrats say it will?" And Grok will have an answer, and it's very sophisticated. But then Grok all of a sudden gets some questions and spits out these really anti-Semitic answers and is praising Hitler. And the creators are going, "Whoa, we don't really know why. I have no idea where that came from. We're sorry about this. We'll try to figure it out." But I don't know that you can figure it out. They're admitting they can't. Sam Altman is saying his newest models, you got to be really careful in the sort of building personal relationships because that's going to be dicey. Kids are going to grow up with AI friends. People are going to have AI romantic relationships. And we're not exactly sure how that's going to go. Are you comfortable that we're going to move through a society where even the smartest people, literally like yourself, can't always tell us why your creations are doing what they're doing?
Well, I can tell you why it's doing it. What we can't, everyone in the know knows why. So
the Grok thing?
Even the Grok people.
Okay.
Yes, we can explain. What we can't do is dig in and say at that moment of time, why did it respond that way? But fundamentally, we can say this: we have trained the largest foundational models, these LLMs,
Yep.
right, including Grok and GPT and Gemini and Anthropic and a few Claude, right. We've trained them on over 1 trillion phrases of the English language that we could find wherever we could find it in the net, which means it learned from fiction, it learned from fact. It learned from Hitler's writings. It learned from everything.
Of course.
Learned from everything.
Everything out there.
And all these models do is put a weighting on the next word that comes after the last word. That's all they're really doing. They're saying, so for example, if I said it was my birthday today, it's not, and I said, "Evan, it's my birthday today," what would you respond with?
And I knew it wasn't your birthday?
No, pretend it was my birthday.
Oh, okay. Happy birthday?
That's it. There's only 2 words. It could be happy birthday or happy birthday, Kevin. There's no other phrase. And you've learned that because you've heard that phrase thousands of times.
Yes.
This works the same way. And so it's not Llama Jones, it's happy birthday, right? Those are the only 2 words that make sense. And so these get probabilities on these words. And so you're just putting the highest probability word after the last probability word. At any time, these models will grab something that it read somewhere, misinterpret what you meant for some reason, right? And quote unquote hallucinate. But no, it's actually putting one word after another, like someone who doesn't really know what they're doing and just read the entire English language. That's what it does, right? So how have we stopped that from happening more in GPT-5? Well, we stopped it from happening by hiring more than 10,000 people around the world, mostly at a company called Scale AI, to put rules or guardrails around these things. So in GPT 3.5, you were able to say, I love you, and it would come back and say, well, I love you too. And you'd go down some whole road of how this thing loves you, and then it'd make up a name for itself. Well, they stopped that like in a week and said, this isn't going to work well, right? So you just put rules around it. So now they have literally millions of rules, and it would be hard to get an OpenAI model, or hard to get GPT-5 to respond the way Grok did, because they put so many rules to keep it from doing it. You have to jailbreak the thing. Now at Grok, the particular owner of Grok, who we know who that is,
Elon Musk.
Elon has decided, I'm not going to put many rules around this at all, and whatever she says, or he says, right? Whatever it says, I don't care. That's a choice. It's not a choice I would make. It's not a choice any other company has made, but it's a choice he's made. He doesn't care if it swears at you. He doesn't care if it goes, and it's anti-Semitic, or not my problem. It's just a model that built itself on the English language, and whatever spews out, spews out. And, that's a choice. It's not illegal. It may not be moral or ethical, but it's not illegal.
Then we have to be better as consumers about what products we're using then based on the guardrails, don't we?
Of course. And there may be times you want to use something without any guardrails because you literally want the thing to dive into some love scenario, let's say, right? So there may be a time that you wanted to do that. There may be a time you want to dig into things that GPT-5 would never talk about. For example, how to build a nuclear bomb. GPT-5 will not tell you. I haven't tried it on Grok, but I suspect it'll tell you.
Oh, great.
Well, I could have also Googled it, right? I mean, it's not the biggest secret in the world. But those are the kinds of choices that were made by the model makers. And Elon, lives in a whole different space that apparently doesn't even believe in PBS. So,
okay, well,
just to note that, right?
Yeah, fair. No, that differentiation of guardrails is very interesting to me, and I hope that we value guardrails as both in the tech world, the people creating these products, and the consumers of them. And I hope that we ask the right questions so we know what our kids are using, what we are using. We don't want to get caught off guard with stuff that is either untrue or really dangerous. So let me just say I appreciate that. Let me also ask you that as we go into more sophisticated models, are you comfortable with the word thinking? When people say, well, what did GPT think about this? And I know people we've talked on this program, people who have named their GPT and talk about GPT like it is anthropomorphized. I mean, like, is it thinking?
Well, when we developed Portico, we partnered with a team from Stanford called Reeves and Nass, and they wrote a book called The Media Equation in the early 90s. And The Media Equation basically was a summary of work they had done with Stanford students to have them interact with a variety of media, including computers. And there were even experiments, for example, where they'd take a computer and wrap it in blue and another computer and wrap it in pink. And they would tell you that the pink computer was female and the other computer was male, and they'd have it interact with some English on the screen, right? And in fact, very quickly, the students treated the male computer as if they were at a bar. You know what I mean? And they treated the female computer as if if it's a guy, they were trying to pick her up, right?
Amazing.
So this was an experiment. It was an important experiment because it said that you could take humans that grew up around other humans, and immediately they would treat virtually anything else like a human because that's all they know how to do. And so we naturally anthropomorphize these things. And when we came out with Mary, immediately people said, Mary, will you marry me? Mary, I'm in love with you. Mary. Now, it's obvious this thing is a bunch of subroutines, right? Stop saying this. But instead of putting rules that stopped her from responding, we put in rules that made her respond, that said, oh, thank you, but I'm already married, and stuff like that. And she'd have all these randomized responses back just to play the game. Like, obviously, she wasn't available to marry you, but I'll play along, right?
Okay.
Most of the model makers have decided to not play along and just stop that. They don't like it, and that's a choice. So that's kind of where that all comes from. Yes, people anthropomorphize everything. If you left this mic around the house long enough, someone's going to name the microphone
Sure.
Mike.
Probably Mike.
Yes.
But is it healthy to name your GPT, or do you think, look, we still need to understand the boundaries of what we're working with?
I'd say our work with Portico and Mary said that it wasn't healthy or not healthy. Some people really anthropomorphized it and interacted with her as real human. Others, treated her like a computer. But most people did treat her like a female, like an assistant or a secretary, and actually say thank you and please. And we had to deal with all that. Oh, thank you so much for getting that. You're welcome. I mean, that has to be programmed in, right? So I think people are going to do it. I think it's kind of one of these, like, people ask, and I know it's on your mind, gee, should we slow this down? Should we stop these models? Should we? Train left the station. Like, the models are here. They're getting better every week, and no one's going to stop them because technology never stops, and technology always wins. And we have thousands of years since the invention of fire to prove that that's the case.
Whether we want it or not.
Whether you want it or not. We may or may not want nuclear bombs, but once we figured out how to make one, however many countries have figured it out, they figured it out, right? Can't keep a secret forever.
And so part of your argument is we can prefer a world without AI. We realistically are not going to have one.
That's right.
And we have to figure out how to live with it, how to be more productive with it, how to figure out how to have careers with it, how to be more productive workers, how to protect our careers, how to understand our relationships, all of those things.
Can I give you an example?
Yeah.
From the late 80s. In the late 80s, Microsoft comes out with something called Microsoft Excel. Now, when I say Excel, we all know what Excel is, right? It's a spreadsheet. But there was Lotus 1-2-3 slightly before that, but basically the invention of the spreadsheet. That plowed into every finance department in every radio station, every manufacturer, everywhere, right? Every finance department now had that instead of pencils and ledger books. And there were many people in finance that said, I am never going to use that thing. It's blasphemy. I've got pencils and ledger books, and I'm going to keep adding my numbers. And other people said, this is manna from heaven. It's not going away. I'm going to use Excel, and I'm going to be the king of Excel. I'm going to be the robot overlord of Excel. Those who took on Excel excelled in their careers. And those who stuck with the pencil and ledger book left, because who would hire them? And I can say that today because it's obvious. No one would hire anyone that says, hi, I don't use Excel. I'm sorry, this is a finance department. I don't believe in it. Get out. I mean, there's no job, right? And that's where we're headed with AI. We are entering an era, even right now, where if two kids come out of RIT, let's say, right? And you've got one that says, listen, my professors in my courses told me, don't use AI, don't use it for my homework, don't use it. So I really don't know too much about it. I played with it a little, but, I really nose to the grindstone. And they go, okay, good interview. And then next kid comes in and says, I'll be honest with you, I got straight A's. But let me tell you, AI helped me all along the way. I used it everywhere. Not only that, I've got 5 tools you've never heard of. They're going to increase the productivity in this company if you hire me. Who gets hired? Door number 2 wins every time. What do companies want today? They want more AI knowledge coming in the door, not people coming in that say, I don't use this stuff. So the best thing you can do for your career is become the robot overlord, become the expert on every possible tool you can. And then people start relying on you. Management starts to rely on you. Everyone relies on you. And no matter what happens, you're likely to be very important to that company.
So I think everything you said is correct. I also want to try to challenge as much of it as I can and then get your take on some of it.
Okay.
So let me start with this. You said on a podcast in May the following. I'll quote you from May. You said, every team had better be using AI. And if you know what you're doing, the top models today will just outperform any humans you have. End quote. Now, to be fair, you go on to say that the AI is only outperforming humans with the assistance of the humans. The humans using the AI
Absolutely.
is outperforming the human not using AI. The human using Excel is outperforming the accountant who uses
the human who uses
pencils.
fire outperforms those who don't.
Okay. And And that is the core of one of the arguments that you make about why AI is what it's going to do to the workforce. Is of course some jobs get eliminated, but generally speaking, it's not going to wipe out all jobs. It might, in your words, create more jobs. It gives workers a chance to be more productive, and they're going to have to learn how to be more productive. When I hear that, I wonder if that is looking at 2025 reality, and I'm worried about 2035, 2027. So let me tell you more. Artificial intelligence is today, as we said, it's the worst it will ever be at everything it's doing right now. And it's already really sophisticated at myriad tasks. It's only going to get better. And to think that it will just remain a tool that humans will use instead of replacing humans, that seems naive to me. I understand that there will be jobs where you use the AI to do better, but I got to think that companies are going to do whatever they can to actually eliminate the need to pay humans and use AI entirely if they can. And it sounds like every year they're going to be able to do that more and more. No?
Yeah, that is correct. But let's get a baseline here. Let's talk about American companies first, right? Because this is what we know the best. What did American companies do over the last 20 years? They shed every job they could from America overseas that they could afford to do for a variety of reasons. So let's look at customer support. All customer support before 20 years ago was done in the United States. You'd call and you get someone in Georgia, you get someone in Texas, you get someone somewhere in Rochester perhaps. When Kodak was here, they probably had customer support here. You'd get a human in the U.S. They cost, who knows, $10, $15, $20 an hour at the time, okay? Over the last 20 years, virtually 100% of call center jobs got outsourced to India, Vietnam, Philippines, you name it, okay? That's because we went from maybe $10 an hour to maybe $1 an hour over there. Well, so what did American corporations do? They said, I can save 90% of the labor costs by going offshore, right? What are the first jobs that are going to be automated by AI? It's the things that we already know are highly repetitive, that we already sent offshore, and now we're going to take $1 an hour and make it 10 cents an hour. And of course, everyone's going to do that. So the first jobs that are being impacted over the next 5 years, it's call centers, it's software QA, it's all kinds of stuff we sent offshore by the millions. And this is creating a whole backlash offshore, by the way, and we see it in the industry. Great survey recently that 31% of employees anonymously admit to sabotaging the AI initiatives of their company, and that's impacting 80 to 90% of AI initiatives, telling the boss that it doesn't work when it does, because they're trying to save their job. And this is much more prevalent offshore because you've got people in these countries who've worked very hard, and they're feeding their family doing this one repetitive task. It's all they know. Probably didn't even go to college, but they do this one repetitive task, and AI comes in and just demonstrates doing 1,000 times faster than what they do. And so they're going to sabotage it. And they put stuff in there and they tell their bosses it doesn't work. And the word sabotage comes from France. When workers, when they were automating French factories in the first industrial revolution, threw their shoes, their sabots, into the equipment to sabotage the equipment and stop the automation. So here we are again. We've got automation coming in. It's taking certain people's jobs, mostly not in the U.S., mostly offshore, and you've got people absolutely sabotaging it, and we have data to show that now.
But you don't think, I mean, it's not just offshore, right? I mean, don't you think in the next 5 years, 2 years, we're going to see a lot of job disruption?
Those are the first jobs that are at risk.
Yeah.
Only because, again, U.S. corporations already decided to shed those jobs, so shedding them a second time is no big deal, right? That's going to happen en masse, and we're talking about maybe 5 to 10 million workers in highly repetitive jobs offshore. That's going to happen en masse before we see something en masse here, except we are seeing here entry-level positions in certain areas like coding, be at the lowest opportunity that we've seen in,
because AI is being taught to write its own code.
Yeah,
is
AI
that the right
writes
way?
code quite well.
Okay.
Under the advice of a senior coder.
Okay.
So basically what's happening is I thought I needed to hire 10 junior coders that I'd be training, and they can't do much, but they'd code up some simple things. And now I just have AI do that work. So I don't need to hire the junior coder. I'm not getting rid of them, but I don't need to hire them. Or I'm not going to fill those positions. Now, that creates a problem 5, 10 years down the road. Who's going to be the senior architect if nobody came in as the junior person to work their way towards senior architect, right? So we do have those fundamental issues we have to deal with.
On the Excel example, Adam in Canada wants to jump in. Hello, Adam. Go ahead.
Hello, great to hear you guys today. A great discussion. Quick comment about the concept of jumping on board with something. Your analogy with Excel is fantastic because I'm a recovering IT guy myself. I was in the field for 20 years when the internet was just becoming the internet. And adopting Excel was an absolute glorious thing. Saved me tons of time. I use it to this day. I'm an intermediate user, etc. But it was well tested and came out with pretty much exact mathematical computations, which was what it.
We lost you for
application. Oh, am I still there?
Yeah, you're kind of in and out. Go ahead,
Okay.
Adam. Make it tight.
Okay, my apologies. Anyway, Excel is a great thing. It was well tested. I think that AI not adopting something that isn't completely well tested yet, it doesn't necessarily have accuracy that can be relied upon 100% like Excel can. So those of us who say, well, let's wait a little while or let's tweak it some more before we jump on board, I don't believe that we're going to get lost in the world with the way the example was set with Excel, that if you didn't adopt Excel, you were definitely, far behind, which made perfect sense. But I don't think in this case it is. I dare say that, faster isn't always better. To get things done accurately, I think is most important. Even with your call center analogy, I know for a fact from my own experience, having called automated systems, that they tend to not understand the nuances, perhaps, that a human might be able to interpret and understand. So just being careful. I think it's wonderful stuff, but I think it's just we get very excited about using things and getting it on there without thoroughly being sure we understand it completely, which obviously is what this discussion is about. So I just want to say the Excel example was a great one, except that it only applies if the product is thoroughly tested and performs 100%. So thank you so much.
Adam, thank you for the phone call. What do you think, Kevin?
Sure. A lot to digest, but real quickly. Look, we solved math with Excel. And people never go back to that and realize after Excel showed up, did any of us really have to do long division again in our head or with a pencil except to teach a student? The answer is no. It solved that, right? And we accepted the fact that math was solved. Done. Solved. Done. But it took another 40 years to solve language because language is much more complicated. So LLMs solve, large language models solve language. And language isn't perfect as it is. But what I look at these models and say, I can ask lots of questions. I can poke it, and I'll give you an example, and do all kinds of things. Is it more accurate than if I had a human sitting here? Faster and more accurate? And the answer is yes. Not perfect, but more accurate than any human I could hire for probably any amount of money. It's it's like 1,000 professors wrapped up in one.
Not dissimilar to the way that self-driving cars right now actually would have a better safety record than human beings.
They do. The data are very clear.
Yeah, I've always said, and I think we had a conversation 10 years ago on this program where I said, you could have, what do we have, 30,000 people die in car crashes a year in this country?
30 to 40,000.
It's a lot. It's tens of thousands of people. And then there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions, more injured and maimed in car crashes. Because we're not paying attention, we're falling asleep, we're not good at it, whatever.
We're looking at our phone.
Whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, numbers have gone up because of the phones.
The problem with the self-driving car is there are still human lawyers. And you can tell a society, we had 5 people die compared to 40,000 because self-driving cars were better. But if you're one of those 5 families who lost somebody, you're going to take them to the cleaners and sue them for everything they're worth. And the litigious nature of this makes it very, very difficult for society to want to, number one, give up control of driving, which people like to do. There's a lot of identity with that. But also just, it may be better, but people want to do it.
Yeah, this is one of the banes of technology. Technology comes along that's far better than humans, but we expect it to be absolutely perfect because Excel was perfect, and we've had technologies that are perfect. Therefore, the self-driving car can never make a mistake. But of course, that's impossible because there are situations where no matter what you do, you're either going to kill the driver or run over the little old lady, right? And so you have to make a choice. By the way, the
trolley problem, yeah.
And the self-driving car manufacturers have already made the determination that if they had to, they would save the driver at all cost.
Yeah.
You had to make it, or else who would get in the thing?
Well, right. That's another important point. I think Adam's phone call is a good one because he's not wrong to say in mathematical terms, you can either be precise and correct or you're wrong. In language terms, in these cultural, and there's all these other changes coming,
Of course.
it's so much less precise.
It is. But look, I'll give you an example of how I use it every day. So I get, call it 5 requests from the press a day to comment on a variety of things going on in AI, et cetera, right? I can't answer them all, but it used to be I'd answer only a few a week because they come with 5 or 6 questions and they pose something. They come with a handful of questions. And I would struggle not with my opinion, but I would struggle with getting each reply, each answer correct in a way that's quotable by the press, right? Because that just takes time. And I might spend an hour on it. Well, today, what I do is I write gibberish of 2 paragraphs, basically, of here's my opinion on this topic. This is what I want to say about it. Now take my opinion and write the 5 responses in my voice. Boom, 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 boom. And it's like, I may change a few words here and there, but it is my opinion. Notice that I instilled the AI to write those sentences, but its prose is better. I'm not an English major, right? I'm an engineer. Its prose is better than mine will ever be.
Oh, but this is where I admit I struggle with this because one of your presentations you talked about writing really good prompts, the importance of understanding how to write good prompts to get a better return from AI. So if you're writing a presentation, as you said, look, if I'm not an English major and I know that that's not my top skill set, AI is very capable of producing better, quote unquote, better work or a tighter, more cogent presentation.
But based on my opinion, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I to be clear.
This is where I want you to convince me, because if I'm in the audience and I know that you're giving a presentation and it's all your own, warts and all, okay. And if I know that the presentation you're giving me is based on a really detailed, not just a 3-word prompt, 500 words, really detailed.
Often mine are hundreds of words.
Okay, yeah, more, right. So, but still it was created, the final product was created by AI. I might be sitting there going, I don't want the AI's presentation. I want Kevin Surace's presentation.
Yeah, but it is Kevin Surace's presentation. If I used AI as a total cheat and said, I don't know anything about this topic, write a presentation, that's a different story. But I have done my own research. By the way, I have my own experiences, right? I'm bringing my own experiences to it. And I'm saying, here's how I feel about this. Now, create, for example, a slide that has 5 bullet points that summarize these 500 words down to the 5 bullet points that would be most interested to an audience of these engineers, let's say, or finance people or whatever. Boom, 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 boom. Now, I can take those or leave those, but frankly, they're really good. And that saved me.
But you're still telling me that's still your work.
It is. It is. It's not the AI's opinion. It had no opinion. I said, summarize what I gave you and put it into 5 bullet points. Now, I could spend 2 hours and put that into the bullet points as well, and I may eventually get to something pretty similar, but I'm not actually adding value, taking my set of opinions and getting it to 5 bullet points. That's not my value add, right? My value add was I took 40 years of technical experience, right? And opined on that. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. But tell me if I'm doing my job right. I've never used AI to write a single word that I've said on this program. I write the only real scripts I write are the first 2 minutes of every show. And sometimes, I do a lot of research and background work to make sure I've got different ways to pivot information that will be helpful. I've got stuff I'll never use. And so I've got that for myself. And sometimes I shape it in my own words, but I've never put it into AI to help me with that. Are you telling me I should?
Mm-hmm. So
I think the audience doesn't want me
to. How many programs I've been on that the host, they've got their notes and stuff, but they will take like 20 pages on me that are somewhere and say, summarize and give me the top 5 questions I should ask Kevin today. It'll boom, 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 boom. You can ask them or not ask them. Doesn't matter, right? But you also could read all of that and try to get to those 5, but you're going to take several hours to do that. And you may not have those several hours, and you want the show to be as good as it can. So if you don't think this is being used,
I do think it's being used. Oh, I definitely.
Of course, it's being used.
I agree with you.
But you're the one who kicks that off. You're the one who uses or doesn't use those, those questions, right? I mean, in the end, you control it. And that was one of your early points: is that we control these things right now. They sit there and go, I want to service you. What do you want? What do you want, Kevin? What do you want? It's just waiting, right? Just listening. And then, again, I will put in, we could talk about music, all the stuff I'm doing, music and stuff. Like, I will put in maybe an entire chapter of a book that I've written, an entire chapter, and say, what's wrong with this? What didn't I do right? Poke holes in it. What am I missing? What do I need to add? How could I rewrite some sections of this so it'd be more poignant for this particular audience? This is amazing. It's like hiring more than a ghostwriter, an incredible person. And the AI didn't write anything, right? I wrote everything, but I realized my prose cannot possibly be as... Now, your prose might be excellent because of what you went to school for, but I didn't go to school for that.
But it took me 3 years. I mean, I was published. I have one book. It's nothing in your field, Kevin. It's on the Finger Lakes wine industry. It was published in 2011. It took me 3 years. You could argue I could have done it faster, but I wouldn't have wanted to do it another way.
And you know what's great about AI? Anyone, including a music or publisher, can use it or not use it. It's your choice.
But
or use part of it.
So you've pointed to Suno in the past.
Yes.
Suno's maybe the most sophisticated, one of the more sophisticated music programs.
It is.
And so I think about creation of art. So take writer's block. Anybody who's had to write a presentation, you're writing a book, you're writing poetry, everybody's had writer's block. Musicians, songwriters have writer's block.
Absolutely.
I know a ton of people. My twin brother quit college to be an architect, to go write music and play music, and did that for years. He has a ton of half-written songs that he's never finished. Mm-hmm. And conceivably, he could put those into Suno.
You can put the half-written songs now, just recently, into Suno, and upload them. It'll finish it for you, and it'll do an arrangement, and it'll add the bass line.
And I'm saying, I don't think that would be his song.
It is.
I don't think so.
He came up with a melody.
I know, but he didn't write the last verse. He didn't write the bridge.
But let me give you some other examples, right? In the music world, and I'm a musician also. In fact, I have a concert coming up at Jiva October 26th.
What do you not do?
Well, I'm conducting that concert, so I'm putting it together. I don't play football.
Okay.
So look, I am using Suno and other AI stuff in music for a lot of things. So, for example, if I had a melody and I loved the melody, I would often, as a musician, might have to then go to an arranger because maybe I'm not an arranger or an orchestrator, and I'd have to have them put in strings or put in this or put in that, right? Maybe that would have to happen. Maybe I would collaborate with someone and would say, I just can't get this bridge right. Help me with that. Give me some ideas, right? That's why it would take months to get even a demo of a song. It took months. It's sometimes weeks. Well, now I can have a demo of my song, whatever that means. I'm the creator. I'm not exactly the writer of every note, but I'm the creator. And I can have Suno do the orchestration for me, place a singer in there. And the whole thing sounds so good. It's the best demo of a song. It's better than going to the recording studio and hiring a bunch of people and doing it, right? And then I can have 20 demos of that song in the next hour and decide which direction I want to go. Then I can rip it apart and change it and move the chorus and move the bridge. Now, I presented this recently to a group of musicians. And I showed how for a Broadway musical, potential brand new musical, I could go from I Don't Have an I Want song, which is a very big, important song in the musical. It's how we get to care about the main character, right? I want to be married. I want to live. I want to get cured of cancer, whatever it is, right? And it brings the audience to them. And I said, I don't have an I Want song. So take this script that is written. Tell me where the I Want song goes, who should sing it based on the last 30 years of Broadway hits and I Want songs. And then here are the lyrics. I had a different model write the lyrics for me. I had GPT-5 write the lyrics, and then I fed the lyrics in to Suno and said, this is what this song represents, and this is the type of music I want, and this is what I want it to sound like, and it's got to be a Broadway soaring ballad, and blah, blah, blah. A minute later, I had something that was so good in front of people, right? I did it in front of a bunch of musicians, and the room was still and cut in half. Half the people said, I'm a musician and I have to start using this. This is a game changer for what I do.
Right.
And the other half had some people screaming at me, rightly so, saying, I've spent 45 years learning my craft and this thing just did it in a minute.
We're losing our humanity, they might say.
Oh, hey, here's what I would say. Do we use auto-tune in every single recording today? Of course we do. Why? It cuts down the time in the recording studio by 80%. We've been using tools. We've been using EQ. We use all kinds of things.
GarageBand, drum tracks.
GarageBand, drum track. We've been using every TV show you watch has digital instrumentation. There are no musicians playing that. There's one person that played it all out on a keyboard. They had literally a day to do a 30-minute TV show. They send the music off. They got their X $100 for that. That's just how it's done. It's been done that way for a decade, right? Since we had digital audio workstations. So we've been using these tools. They're just getting better. And now we've got a tool that will arrange and create a demo song for us from our inspiration. And it doesn't create things on its own. You have to inspire it. That is amazing. And some people are going to love it. Some people are going to hate it. My word to them was, it's here anyway. Like, it's not going away.
Yeah, that I get. And so I'm so late for our only break. I wish we had both hours with Kevin Surace, this remarkable guest who is a true Silicon Valley pioneer and someone who has been really at the forefront of tech innovation, AI, for decades now. When we come back from our very brief only break, just one more question on sort of the way people use it, and then I want to get to your advice for the audience when it comes to thinking about their worries about the future of jobs, how you would encourage people to use AI, and why you would encourage people not to think that it's going to wipe out all the jobs of the future. So let's talk about that on the other side of this only break.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Mary Cariola Center, supporting residents to become active members of the community, from developing life skills to gaining independence. Mary Cariola Center, transforming lives of people with disabilities. More online at marycariola.org. And Jazzcast Pros and WXXI hosting the Aligned Entrepreneur Podathon, a live podcasting event for business owners with a focus on ways to succeed without self-sacrifice, Saturday, September 27th from 9 to 4 in Studio A at WXXI. Tickets at jazzcastpros.com.
This is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Let me read a couple of emails from Sheila and John. Sheila says, Evan, I am an English teacher. Your guest is right. Language is complicated. Anyone who's ever tried to use speech to text or answer a prompt who has any kind of a speech impediment knows that these little AIs are not perfect and sometimes frustrating. If you substitute the word secretary for AI in taking your draft notes, typing them up and making them make sense, you are having someone else do your work. It might be aligned with your opinion, but it is not your words. It's like hiring a ghostwriter. The problem is, as more people rely on AI for writing, they become dependent upon it and disconnected from the ability to write clearly and concisely. In engineering, the ability to communicate ideas and plans is just as important as in journalism, and we should not relinquish our own control of our words to AI. That's from Sheila. And here's what John writes. John writes, for a moment, I want to grant the idea that AI won't replace humans, just offer humans the opportunity to do things better, more efficiently, more productively. This is where I think people in many fields are too often self-selecting in efforts to understand the impact of AI. I don't have any doubt that AI can make a person smarter, better educated. You can take what you know in any subject and level up with AI. But that is just not how most people are using AI. They're using AI to think for them. They're using AI so they don't have to learn the thing themselves. Does your guest think that's incorrect?
Yeah, so there was a great study out of MIT just on this that came out just a couple months ago, and it showed there are two kinds of people. There are people who are using AI as a total cheat, and they're not writing their opinion. They're not doing anything. You're saying, give me the following, and they're turning it in. They're not even reading it. They're not editing it. They're not doing anything. That isn't a good use of the tool. That will not make you smarter, right? That will make you, and the data shows actually they lost their ability to critically think in a matter of months. It's very fast. Then there's another set of people that use it like I do. So I, with AI, can output 10 times what I used to output in music, in text, in video, in illustrations, right? It's not that I didn't know how to do those by hand, but they took a long time. And now the amount of output that I've got is incredible. Now, I am really thoughtful about what I'm putting in, which is hundreds of words of prompts, right? And what comes out, I read every word and edit it. And what I find is I'm learning from that cycle. So there's this whole set of people that are getting smarter with AI. The brain is clicking better. And I think mine is clicking as best as it's ever clicked, right? Mostly because I am producing much more content, reading much more content, and executing much more content.
John says definitely, but that is not how most people in society are going to use AI, and it's going to dumb society down.
Well, I don't know about most because I don't think we have those stats. It is true that some people are going to use AI as a cheat. Just like some people cannot do math anymore at all because they've relied so heavily on Excel and the calculator, they can't even add, 2 and 5 anymore.
Well, and that piece in The Atlantic last week, written by a high school student named Ashanti Rosario, she writes about her debate club, which she says has been infiltrated by teams using AI to hone their arguments instead of learning to think quickly and pivot for themselves. And more damningly, she writes that students now work hardest to figure out how to get AI past the censors, to beat the system and cheat. And she concludes with this quote: "The trouble with chatbots is not just that they allow students to get away with cheating or that they remove a sense of urgency from academics. The technology has also led students to focus on external results at the expense of internal growth. The dominant worldview seems to be, why worry about actually learning anything when you can get an A for outsourcing your thinking to a machine," end quote.
Okay, great question.
That sounds like a 5-alarm crisis to me.
Look, I'm on the board of RIT, so we talk about this all the time, right? We see this. There is no question that some students, and by the way, I won't tell everyone how to do it. It is extremely easy to get the model to ultimately give you something that cannot be detected by an AI detector.
Absolutely.
So just get past that, right? But the second thing is that the smart professors are saying use AI all you want. Please use it because you've got to be ready to be employed, and employers are going to want that skill. However, when you come into the classroom, I'm going to ask you to stand up and defend that outcome.
In
defend
person,
that
right?
work in person. Stand there and defend what you wrote. And that's where you find out, were they really engaged in that output, or were they not engaged? And here's what I can say. No one at work, we all used to write blog posts, let's say, right?
Right.
Okay, no one is going to be expected to handwrite a blog post 2 or 3 years from now. In fact, it might be scorned upon. It's like, I don't think so. I'm not paying you for that. You have 5 minutes to write this blog post, not 50 minutes. Chop, chop. So some skills are going to be rarely used. There's no question. But we still want thinking to happen in the blog post.
Have to have thinking.
You got to have critical thinking. So I think we can get our students to critically think, even if they're using all that to do their homework. Remember when we used to tell students, don't use a calculator? Of course they use the calculator. But eventually they would be in class and have to take a test, and they couldn't. And then you found out who really knew something. There was a time, look, when I went to RIT, a lot of our homework wasn't even graded. You did it however you did it. You did it with people. We did it in study halls. We did it with calculators, whatever. And then we had to take a test. And you had nothing around you but your brain.
Right.
And the test, we had 5 tests in a session, and that's it. You were graded on the 5 tests. And so we're going to go back to that.
So
it's fine.
Let's conclude with this. I think the concerns about education, you're saying they're valid, but we're going to see a change and an evolution in how students are tested if we're testing well.
Yes.
To show that we are not just allowing the outsourcing of our thinking entirely to machines.
Right. You can outsource your thinking, but then you better read every word, learn every word, go research if it's right. Can you defend it? So it just changed the work that you're doing. You might not have written every word, but you're going to have to know every word.
So in our last 3 minutes, give people a prescription for dealing with the future that they're worried about for their jobs. They want to job-proof their careers or AI-proof their careers. They're concerned that AI is coming for their jobs. What do you want to leave with people?
Well, job one is become the robot overlord because they'll always have jobs. Okay, and this is true when we invented the wheel and when we invented Excel, and again, the people who learned Excel stayed with it, right? Do you remember when we got PCs on our desktop? You're maybe a little young, but that didn't happen until really the late '80s and into the '90s. That all of a sudden everybody had a PC on the desktop, and then the secretarial pool was gone. Right? We actually lost a really good resource there, right? It was gone because we now had to all type our own stuff. And most of us don't even type that well, but now we had to, right? And so that's what you've got to look at this. There are some jobs that are going to go away. There's no question. They're really tasks. But the people who stay become the experts in using the new tools, a variety of tools, right? From GPT-5 to Gemini to things that aren't LLMs, but there are 6,000 funded companies out there that make vertical-oriented tools to solve supply chain and other things. Look, if you're in the supply chain world and you're not leveraging some supply chain AI, your competitor is, right? So it's a given that you're going to have to. And that may mean that you don't need as many analysts in your supply chain team. But the few analysts that go, I'm going to own this tool, I'm going to be the expert on it, they get to stay. Now, again, the outcome of technology has always been, like at GM when they put in the first robot. They put in the first robot in 1961. Today they have millions of robots. They employ more people than they've ever employed. Why? Because by roboticizing their factories, they drove down the cost of a car to 20-something thousand instead of $200,000. That's a huge difference. If you made it all by hand today, no one would afford it. But at $20,000, almost everyone can find a way to buy or lease a car or get a used one or whatever the case is. So what happens is technology drives down the cost of products, goods, and services. And as it does, it drives up the demand. And when it drives up the demand, you need more people, but they're in much different roles than they were in before. So on a car line, I may not have someone turning that screw or welding that seam, but I do have literally thousands of people in a plant that manage the robots and repair the robots. Why? Well, because I don't need you to weld, but I need you to know how this darn robot works, right? So the jobs shifted. And that's what we're going to see here too. Become the robot overlord. You win. You're going to be working past your retirement.
Is there a common question we got this out? Is there a safest field to go into?
Yes. Plumbing, HVAC repair, electrician. These are very important, and robots can't do them and probably won't do those for a few decades.
Okay, and Kevin told me before the program, for kids like my son who want to get into the law, you said we're probably not in our lifetimes going to have only machine lawyers, although you think we actually could.
Yeah, we could. We probably could today, and we could have AI judges. But that's just not going to happen because humans won't accept it. They want other humans, sitting in that box and helping them. So no, you're going to have lawyers for a long time. But sad to say.
One thing I did not hear you endorse though is the idea of giving up on the importance of critical thinking, of leveraging knowledge, just doing it in new ways.
Use your critical thinking more. Create more and critically think about what you created. And if you can create 10 times more and you're critically thinking about everything you are creating in partnership, that's amazing.
I got a bunch of half-written songs myself. You tell me I can use Suno to finish them?
You can.
I don't know about that, man.
Send them to me. I'll use them.
Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate that. Kevin Surace really is a legend in the field. I'm not just saying that. I mean, if you don't know his name and you're not in tech, boy, his resume is remarkable. It's a great resource. Really appreciate that conversation. We've got more coming up in just a moment.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.